What's up, everybody? We are live. We're actually live on Garage Strength Instagram. I got a lot of studies in front of me. I've got some Spanish lessons in front of me right here. I should be yelling at everybody in Spanish in my broken Spanglish. Got my kombucha with me, my trusty kombucha, and then we're gonna start getting into everything. So right off the bat, of course, we've got to go over who won this week's YouTube Live giveaway. When we look at the YouTube Live giveaway, what does that entail? That entails all you have to do is comment on the video. You have to make sure that your YouTube subscriptions are active. And then you've got to show up that Tuesday Live to figure out, did you win that YouTube giveaway? So Mildberg 9241, let's see. Mildberg 9241 right there. This video inspired me to do some cardio after not doing it for a while on vacation. So Mildberg 9241, all you've got to do to claim that prize is to email us at support@garagestrength.com that you won the giveaway. Provide a screenshot of your YouTube channel, of your YouTube studio using that same account that you used to enter the giveaway so that we can verify that you're the winner, and then we're going to send you that shirt in the mail. I don't know which one it was on that, but this is one of our sweet shirts. I love this shirt. I wasn't sure how people would like it, but people seem to love it. Absolutely love it. Now, next one. Let's see. Gabriel Roman 8473. Gabriel Roman 8473. I'm trying to read what he said here. Great learning from you. Love seeing different perspectives on training and dropping some knowledge for the public. Hope to bring this to... Yeah, I can't read the rest of that because I can't see. So, Gabriel Roman, 8473, Mildberg, 9241. Make sure you email support@garagestrength.com. Take a screenshot of your YouTube studio. Okay, you're going to email that to us. And then... obviously, you should be watching this. You have to, after you email that, send over your address. We confirm it's you, and we send you the free gear. We send you that free shirt. Free gear, baby. All right, so what's up, legend? Greetings once again. Greeting once again from Spain. What leg exercise can I do from Big Poppy? What leg exercise can I do? You can do whatever you want. Let's get into some of these really, really good questions. And also remember, one of those big things that we bring up and we discuss is that every single week, dude, we are in the YouTube chats and in the comments. And I think that this is something that recently I've been thinking about. Best strength program for 9 to 5 workers. Best strength program for 9 to 5 workers is such a peak strength video. Best strength program. I think what I would do is, one, I would try and train, let's say 3 days a week. Okay, 3 days a week. And I would try to train twice. I'd go like a Saturday and a Sunday. If I'm talking about strength training for a 9 to 5 worker, I would try and strength train on a Saturday and a Sunday. And then pick like the easiest day during the week that you can get to the gym. And if you've got one other day that you're capable, then go into the gym on that 4th day. And I would try and do that Lulu split that we've talked about. Lower body, upper body, lower body, upper body. Sean Shepard coming in with that super chat. Thank you very, very much. How long have you been a Team USA coach? This is actually going to feed into one of our questions. Big Poppy, absolutely 100%. Okay, so Damon Gilbert, one of my best friends, my instructor, was a captain of Team USA when they went to Russia. 08, 09, took gold, heavyweight, 19-time USA champ. Congrats, well-deserved. Man, that is nuts. Damon Gilbert. So, Sean, I've been on USA teams, so for weightlifting and for track and field, since 2016, since the fall of 16. And I've been with, Samoa, South Africa, Nigeria, Canada, the U.S., obviously. So out of those years, 16 every single year, 2 to 3 events with the U.S. team, and then World Championships or the Olympics with those other countries. So 16, I had a Samoan Olympian, Alex Rose, and then 21, that's who I was with in Tokyo, was the Samoan team, but we also had Sam Mattis, who trains here on site. So we were there with the U.S. and with Nigeria, South Africa as well, and Canada. So, since 16, Sean, thank you so much for that super chat. Is it safe for young lifters to do Zercher-based lift? My question, a relevant user, would be, how young is young? Is it safe for young lifters to do Zercher-based lifts? My next question would be, what's the purpose? What do you believe is the purpose of doing the Zercher-based lifts? And then can we prevent injury while doing them? So if you're, I would need clarification on age and then purpose of those Zercher lifts. What made you want to open up a gym for sports performance weight training? I think most gym owners, and I could be wrong with this, but I feel like most gym owners open up gyms because they like to train, they like to be in the weight room, they like to push themselves, they like to, get swollen, everything along those lines. And what ends up happening is you open up a gym and you think, like, this is what's going to make me money. This is what's going to be, the key for my growth and happiness and success. And so you start a gym literally because you just want to hang out. And then 5 to 8 years later, you realize you're not making any money and you've got to figure out how you can actually make money. And I think that's the biggest downfall about opening up a gym, is that you never really think through, how am I going to make money off this? Like, how am I going to actually be able to, do well and figure out those things? So I think that's a big question. So we did have a question. Tell us about Piros Dimas and the U.S. team. And I think that, I wanted to bring this up around questions or around comments. We check all the comments on YouTube. I get them on my phone in the YouTube studio. I go in very regularly. And I think that there's one thing here, is that a lot of people will be like, oh, in like today's day and age, it's today's day and age, it's commonplace to be like, well, don't worry about what people think about you. And the funny part for me around that is that I think it's important that you don't really worry about what people think about you. But I do think it's also important to know what people think about you, because, and that's where these comments come in. That's where the YouTube comments, they sort of educate us on what we're putting out. They help us with ideas. We get to have better relationship with you guys. We build that community, but also I like to think about it through the lens of when I was at university, when I was in college, studying religious studies. One of the things was we would get criticized all the time by our peers and all the time by our fellow students. So I think that one of the most important aspects is like actually being aware of what people think about you. And then making sure you're not necessarily making comparisons of yourself to other people, but understanding like it's okay that people think things about you and know why they think those things about you. I think that that's something that I just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, going into this, tell us about Piros Dimas and the U.S. team. And I think that, for those who don't know who Piros Dimas is, he's a 3-time Olympic champ, bronze medalist, I think a 3-time world champion. And I think that some of the coolest parts about being around him, and I'm looking at Sean's comment, my original school in Damon's was started in the garage for years. That's cool. I think the biggest, did you tell Nick to stop cleaning 175 in sneakers? You literally made it. So Sam, I did not tell him that. I told his brother that. His brother still comes in, and they'll figure that out. I think the biggest thing about Piros, though, 3-time Olympic champ, multiple-time world champion, is that when you're around somebody like him, you sort of put him at this pedestal, right? You're like he's like up here. He's just like this absolute animal. And then you realize like he's a very, very normal person, like elite. He's an elite level athlete that's extremely humble and just normal. He's as normal as he comes. He's a goofball. Like, he clowns around a lot. He wants attention. But he's also very open to sharing his knowledge and his information. And I think that that's the coolest part is like, if you're willing to listen to him, he'll answer any question that you have. Anything that you ask him, he'll answer. And all the way down to, how did you peak? What are your rituals? You know, I remember him telling me stories about how he would pack his daughter's one T-shirt and take her T-shirt with him so that the night before his competition, he would have his oldest daughter's shirt with him as he was going in for preparation for a big competition. So I think that the coolest part around what he tends to do, what Dimas tends to do, is he just offers that really, really elite level insight that oftentimes I think we overlook. But if you can bring that, if you have somebody that can bring that to the table, that's going to help you keep things a little bit more real. Yeah, I think that the big factor there is like, as far as Dimas and being around that, and the U.S. team, the U.S. team's usually pretty tight as far as what we're doing in competition. I think we're very, especially in track and field, pretty organized, and at least we'll have our own track. We'll do our own thing. We'll stay away from everybody else. And a lot of the coaches do separate things as well. I think that's the interesting part, is that a lot of other countries will have, you know, one sort of like figurehead that runs everything, or two or three guys that run everything. With the U.S., it's every coach for themselves. It's everybody's doing their own thing, controlling their environment, their situation. And all the athletes are tight with one another, but we're all decentralized. Nobody's training in one specific location. So it does lead to some substantial competition internally instead of collaboration, which can be something that I think just has to be brought up to a point. One of the best lifts for volleyball, we literally filmed a volleyball video this morning covering the 2 best lifts for volleyball. And then we provided crazy progressions and accessories around those lifts. One of them has never been filmed. I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere on the internet. The one accessory that we actually shared. That mindset doesn't let you grow because, yeah, exactly, Sean. That's 100% fact. I think that's the biggest downfall with the U.S. team, is that we want to keep everything to our chest instead of collaborating with each other as coaches. Because then if we did that more in the U.S., I think as coaches shared everything, then everybody would be that much better. Because there's the only competition in my mind, and this might not sound realistic, but in my head now, as I've matured, and this has taken me a long time to realize this, but the only competition that I'm dealing with is literally what's in my brain. And the only competition is, how am I handling my time? How am I handling my efforts? How am I strategizing my day? That's the competition. The knowledge and the time and the effort that you spend with your athletes should be viewed as a collaboration. At least in my opinion, I try to view it as a collaboration. And I also believe that over time, I don't even think that we're really competing with one another in individual sports. We're so focused on competing against ourselves. Is what we should be doing, is focusing upon competing against ourselves. And then in turn, you can compare yourself in that competitive situation. But if as coaches, we were more focused on that, I think we would have more sharing of knowledge. And I think that's the biggest thing that I learned from Piros, is like, he would even say that, like, you know, when we would, it was him and Mark Huster, Azanidze, and Shaheen Nazarina, those guys would actually talk. At least I know that Mark Huster and he were close friends, and Azanidze is a close friend of his. So I know that they would talk and share their information, share their preparation and their knowledge, and then it would just come down to like, yo, whoever's the best wins. You know, I think that that's one mindset that we could try to adopt that might be a little bit better. Okay, when will you make more garage strength gyms around the country? I have no idea. I've thought about this. Some people have talked to me about franchise. So franchising would be sort of the CrossFit model, where it's like you've got the CrossFit model and you have to pay like a franchise rate. So let's say you pay a flat fee to use the name, to use products, and to use, whatever stuff you'd be selling. So that's one thought process. Another thought process that I've had is fully flesh out our business model here for our on-site gym, fully flesh out what we do online and actually own properties throughout the country that would become garage strength gyms. I have thought about it, but I just think it's an absolute, that would be something probably in like a 25-year goal. Like literally, if I would look at it like, in 100 quarters, just doing simple math there, if I looked at 25 years from now, in 100 quarters, could we work to having 20, 25 properties that have gyms on them that are garage strength gyms that use Peak Strength as the app, that use our equipment and all those things? That's how I sort of see that type of question. So I'm not against it. I just know there would be a lot. I know there would be a lot into that. Coach, please do 5 cleans, run 200 meters. Every 200 meters, run and hit 5 squat cleans to 5 or 6 rounds. Does it affect muscle in any way? That would be really, really hard, OKK. Really hard. I would just rather do like 6 triples of cleans and then, 2 days later, go out and run 6 200 meters. Okay, Navy M over on Instagram. Hey, Coach, how can I strengthen my emotional and mental strength as an athlete and as a person? I tend to hold myself with good confidence, but in competition I falter and it affects my competition. I think mindset's got to be one thing where you're prepared as far as what goes into the competition. What are you focusing on during the competition? How are you ritualizing the preparation for the comp? And then also, what are you doing inside? What are your 1 or 2 cues that you're focusing on during the competitive situation that you're in? And then building upon that and just getting comfortable with competing all of the freaking time. I wanted to bring this one up. This is a great question that a lot of people, I'm a big fan of various sports. What exercises work for swimming? Okay. And the big question here was, does this quad specific training session work for swimming? And so what I wanted to do was actually, this is a soccer. I'll have to bring that up. Soccer cardio. I think there we go. Does this work for swimming? And so I'm putting up this paper right here. Okay. The impact of resistance training on swimming performance, a systematic review. And then we've got, there's not another, Jason, you didn't put the other swimming paper in here. So there's another swimming paper I was hoping to get in here. Let me see. Yeah, it's not in here. Okay, so this study, the impact of resistance training on swimming, right? This actual study basically says, look, resistance training, swimming, positive impact. There needs to be more research on it. There's not a lot of research around resistance-based training and swimming, which is pretty wild. And essentially they took sort of like a semi-meta-analysis. They looked at this and they said, okay, what's the transfer of resistance training modalities to swimming performance? Meaning, if we test a pull-up or a bench press or a box jump or whatever, power clean, does it have an impact on swimming in a positive light? And then basically for optimal transfer, specific low volume, high velocity, high force resistance training programs are optimal. So that means lift heavy. Swimmers should be lifting heavy based off of this paper right here. And I think that's one thing that we forget is even in an 800 meter, we'll think you shouldn't power clean. If you're running 800 meters, we should just do 6 sets of 5 power cleans. But in reality, what you're probably going to see is that distance runner, the 800 meter sprinter endurance athlete, would probably benefit more from doing 7 doubles on a power clean or 7 triples on a single leg squat, because it's going to create a characteristics which you'll note in this specific study right here can lead to greater stroke output. Okay, so if you have more power output from a stroke, you'll take less strokes per lap. Now, we also have to train specifically so that you're in the sense of swimming, you're actually able to handle the endurance of putting out a large amount of force and repetitively do that for 2, 4, 8, 12 laps, whatever that race length is going to be. And so I think the big factor here is that swimming performance and the results of such will be highly informative for the scientific community. So one of the things here that I did want to bring back up with swimmers was this study sort of shows, okay, lifting heavier is going to be beneficial. Do these explosive movements as well. It's going to be beneficial for swimmers. Also, there's a large amount of research on resistance-based swimming, okay? And so in sprints and in swimming, there's oftentimes a concern that when we're doing resistance-based swimming or resistance-based running, meaning pulling a sled if we're running, it could have a negative impact on our technique, or running with a parachute, anything along those lines, right? And what we're seeing now, especially in the means of acceleration, like 10 meters to 30 meters, is that that's not really happening at all. And even swimmers will do resistance-based swimming with a bucket or a little, sort of like a little fan that sort of comes out here that catches more water and creates a little bit more drag. Even using a smaller parachute. And essentially, if you can figure out in your periodization model as a swim coach, you're going to actually see, as long as you're still doing really good technical work with the stroke, that you will see, based off of proper periodization, a drastic improvement in stroke power output, and it's not going to have a hindrance on your actual stroke technique. And there's a large paper that researched this from 2015. And next time I'll try and share that paper with you guys, but it's I'll actually see. I don't think I can pull it up here. I don't know if I remember how to do that, but it's one of those papers that I'm going to pull up. I have it up on my computer right now. It is titled, I'm also looking at how much shoulder strength we use. Shoulder strength during pressing is one of the things that we're doing, that I'm researching, and also chronic intake of a meal based around Alaskan pollock, which is an interesting one. I can't find the swimming one that I had up it was in my one journal based around that. Okay, so let's get into this next question. Best soccer cardio split, which I do not think I have. Oh yeah, maybe I do. This is from user. Okay, so this is from user ZG2RR. Which day of the regular garage strength training split should I do cardio on? How many days if I play soccer? What I would do is I would go on the morning of athlete day. I would probably do some type of endurance work for 40 to 60 minutes, okay? Long, steady state. And I've also got to answer, Sean, I'm going to be getting to your question here shortly. Then the morning of impulse. Okay, morning of impulse, day 4. You would potentially could do some type of another thing of, let's say, specific endurance work on the morning of impulse. And then you could also potentially do that on the morning of hypertrophy day. Now, one thing that you could do is you could also remove hypertrophy day. So if you're a soccer player, you're only going to lift 4 or 3 days, depending on your schedule, 4 or 3 days of lifting. And then what you can do is add in endurance on, let's say, the day 5 when you don't have a lift, and then add in endurance the morning of athlete day or the morning of impulse day. That's how I would split up using endurance-based training concurrently. And that's the one big factor too, is that concurrent-based training is literally going to be the best modality of strength training, where you're training power-based work, you're training absolute strength, you're training to improve endurance, and that's where you're going to see the biggest gains. Now, are you a fan of weighted abdominal machines? Oh, weighted ab machines? I'd say this, Sean, I've never really used them that much. I've always felt that I could get ab work from, yes, a 16-year-old swimmer can lift weights. That's what that research paper right here, if we're looking at this specific paper right here, if you're a swimmer, you should be lifting weights. If you're a swimmer, you should be using some sense of resistance-based swimming to improve your stroke output. You just need to figure out what that consistency is to make sure that you're optimizing your technique at the same time. Okay, so Sean's asking about weighted ab machines. I have never used them a ton because I've spent so much time thinking like just an ab wheel or V-ups, pause V-ups, doing unique med ball stuff. I get enough direct ab work just from that. I don't think there's a return based off of the cash that you have to spend. What are some good books to develop a champion mindset? I think the best books for me, and I do want to just preface this, is that I think some people really bode well by reading like a Jocko Willink book or David Goggins book, and they get like super motivated. I've never fared overly well with reading some of those, but I still like reading them, ironically. I actually get pretty motivated by regularly writing down my goals and thinking through, and I'm going to tie this into, this one's for Sean, a bit around this, okay? So like I like reading books around training. I like reading books actually around philosophy, and a lot of it for me is like Confucianism theory and Confucianism practice, and that helps me practically apply my thoughts. And I think that's typically like the champion mindset, is like constantly trying to zero in what those thoughts are. And this is where I believe that, you know, our tagline is cultivate your power. Okay. That's 100% our tagline, right? You know, remember at the end of our YouTube videos, we're always saying, you know, because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. And I think one of the most important things that we can do as individuals is write down, like, what does that mean? You know, what is that power? What are you cultivating? And I listened to a Rick Rubin interview where Rick Rubin, who is one of the most popular producers, one of the most famous producers, you know, we produced everybody in the 90s, basically, still a great producer now. And I forget what he would call it. He would call it like the source. I think he would refer to it as the source. And I think that if you look at it like cultivate your power, the power for me is what do I feel that energizes me and creates this positive reaction that I want to do it, right? I want to do this. This is me cultivating my power. The power in me, even if, you know, and a lot of people get this very easily when they're going to do a lift, like a bench press or a back squat or a power clean or whatever, a box jump, whatever, they're going to compete. The other thing is to then think about, if we compete in specific sports or specific tasks, or if we play an instrument, or we're in theater or something along these lines, the expression or the feeling that you're getting when you're executing these things in a sporting event and you're not thinking, and then later on you recognize that, yeah, that was a great time, that was a great experience. That's creating, you know, that's acknowledging that power that was within you, and you cultivated it, you pulled that out of you. And I think that that's the one big thing with musicians that Rick Rubin was talking about, is the source. You've got to be able to bring the source out of you, and that source can lead to massive amounts of creativity. And if every single morning you can sit there and ask yourself, what is my power inside of me? What is going to bring that power out? What's going to make me feel more powerful? What's going to help me with that source, as he would refer to it, and what's going to pull that to the surface and help me execute these tasks so I can get closer to cultivating your power, right? And I think that that's the big thing, Sean, that I would say along the lines of motivational books, is that there's a lot of cool motivation in them, but I don't think they ever really target the source, as Rubin refers to it, because they don't acknowledge that it's an abstract concept, but what you have to do is figure out what that is for you. You know, for Sean, it might be training his grandkids. Maybe, I don't know. For me, it's I want to offer easy access freak training to the entire world. I want, you know, the 50, 60 countries that are inside Peak Strength. I don't remember the exact number. I know we recently, I'll look that up. But I want to offer what that is that's the power for me of what I want to generate, what I'm doing with the YouTube channel, what I'm trying to do with the YouTube channel, what I'm trying to provide people with Peak Strength. And in turn, hopefully that leads to spreading things more and giving more opportunity to people to go to the Olympics and to accomplish great things, and then to have a positive impact on their relationships and everything along those lines. I'm actually looking up the number of countries here. One of my workers here we go. So right now we have 39 countries inside of Peak Strength. And I think that's freaking one thing that to me is like, I want that 39 countries. We've had 161 countries open the app. in the last 30 days. 161 have opened the app, but only 39 are actually using it. And my goal would be like, for me, is like, well, why didn't those other 150 or 140, why aren't they using it? How do we get them all in to their training so that they can cultivate their power, so that they can be developing themselves, spiritually to a point. And Sean, you did ask me, I do know John Schaefer. I don't know him very well, but I do know who he is. He's actually close to me. He's, meaning geographically, one of my friends actually trained with him. We're in the same county. Our county here, I don't know if you guys know this, Dana Lynn Bailey is actually from our county. We've had like a crazy amount of just high level coaching, fitness area stuff in this county. Hello from Europe. Thanks for coming in. Jude Bueno loves peak strength. 7 weeks in, and he has 5 rep maxes for the clean and the back squat, front squat, and bench press, and they're all up by 50 plus pounds. Jude Bueno, 50 plus pounds on his bench press, front squat, back squat, and clean. Dude, that's freaking awesome. Okay, Kay, thank you. I appreciate you being in here. And I believe meditation can help power output, mainly because of the intentional task. And when we're thinking about that, is like when we're doing something intentional, right? When we have memories, okay? So this is like getting a little bit into neuroscience. Is that, yo, what's up, Steve from Iowa? How you doing, Steve? Good to see you in the chat. When we're thinking through the actual memories that we have, the memories that we can sort of pull from, okay, are memories that we're entirely present for, right? Like we are all in and intentional for them when we're executing them, and they are the strongest memories that we can then pull from. And that's where a lot of us might have really good memories from when we were children, or really good memories from from an athletic event, a really good memory from something that dude, this sounds terrible, but you'll have memories even of a passing of a very close loved one because you were so present and intentional in that scenario. And the reason why I'm saying that is I'm going back to David's question about meditation, is that the reason why meditation can increase power output is because it forces you to zero in on the task of what you're doing. You become more present in that scenario, and then in turn, that helps you execute and become more powerful in that situation. So I think that's something where I believe meditation is extraordinarily powerful. There's a lot of evidence that is out there that will show meditation and consistent prayer, quiet sitting, yoga, whatever you want to do to zero in your brain, those rituals are phenomenally effective, and in some cases as effective as therapy. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go to therapy. That means that if you do them concurrently, they are absolutely amazing. Okay. So I did want to bring this up. There's a book called Mindset. I'm looking at it right now. Mindset from Carol Dweck. And it's a little dry. There's a lot of information on it. Like I think that's another thing around like pop meditation stuff is so much easier to read, or pop mindset stuff versus Carol Dweck's. It's a little bit more in depth of an actual textbook, but she does a very good job of breaking down mindset. So I think that's another way to sort of look at it. Man, we gotta get Jude Bueno. We gotta pull Jude Bueno's comment out for a review over on Peak Strength. Definitely round 1, since we saw teams are comfortable drafting running backs this year. Oh, Jude's responding to what round is Nick going to be drafted? I think this year is going to play a big role on what place Nick would get drafted. I think that if Nick can come out of this year healthy and having like a building year upon last year, like last year was a phenomenal year for him, and if he can perform, let's say probably statistically 15 to 20% better than last year, I would say that he'll be a first round pick. If he can take that play up a little bit more and remain healthy, I think he'll be a first round pick. Obviously I'm like, I want him to be a first round pick, but just saying that doesn't matter. You've got to look at the stats, and you've got to look at what he's got physically he's all there, right? And that's apparently they're doing some really unique stuff with him in practice as well. Sean was saying before he fights, he focuses on the best time he's ever fought, the time that all my techniques were connected. And this is a good example, is that even fighters will have examples of, Jude's commenting about peak strength again in here. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a big thing Jude's bringing up, is like, you got to stick to it for at least 8 weeks, right? You've got to build that out for 8 weeks. And that's the one thing with meditation. People will do it for like 4 weeks and then they stop. People they'll eat high protein for 4 weeks and then they stop. Do that for 7 years. Do it for 10 years and see where you're at. Robert Greenfield, what's his name? Robert Greene. Robert Greene, he wrote the 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene has a statement where he's like, he's been practicing meditation now for, it's like 30 some years. And he's like, that's what mastery is, right? And he's got a whole book called Mastery as well. He's like, if you want to be good at something, you have to just relentlessly do it. So if you're going to improve your strength, you have to do that, not for 8 weeks, not for 12 weeks, but stay on a consistent path for a decade, and then you'll get to that point. If you want to be, zeroed in, and this goes to what Sean was just talking about, and even what I was discussing with memories, is that if we're thinking about memories, the things that we remember, we were most present for and most involved in. And Sean's talking about fighting, and if you ever hear a UFC fighter or a boxer talk about certain points in certain rounds, they can walk you through very, very minute details of that round as though that time frame lasted 5 or 6 seconds, and in reality it was a split second. Wrestlers, they can do this very well. Throwers will do this very well. And the reason being is they're so intentionally present that everything else that's a distraction is no longer there, and the time, literally, they lengthen their time constraint. There's a minimal constraint on them, and so they experience things to a higher degree, to a higher sensory degree. And so you get into this state of mind and you execute at such a high speed over a shortened constraint, so it's almost not there. So you experience things that are high speed over a longer time, and then you can share them very deeply with someone to try and get them to understand what you were going through, what you were rolling through in that specific fight. In this case, Sean's discussing his technical aspect. And that's something that you can, again, going back to the discussion of music, is that you can hear musicians talk about that when they get into these states of rhythmic execution, and they might go 15 to 20 minutes without even acknowledging what's going on. I actually think about this one song. I don't know anyone who can't listen to Ode to Joy from Beethoven and listen to it and be like, wow, like 10 minutes goes by and you're like, oh my gosh, like it takes you through a journey. My 8-year-old son listened to it, and at the end of the song, he was like, wow, that was really neat. Like what, like how can I do that? And he wasn't even distracted, and he's 8 years old. So I think that that's one thing that we can think about in training with meditation and with these specific technical sports, is that I think it's very important to acknowledge the power of your mind and the power of what it can do in different scenarios. Okay, so Anonymous is in the house. Anonymous, I'm so happy you're here. What's up, dude? How are you doing? I know calisthenics translates to weights, but is the same case with weight translating to calisthenics? So I believe, let's take a single leg squat for an example, okay? If I'm executing a single leg squat, let's just say 4 sets of 5, I do 100 kilos, okay? If I would do the calisthenic version of that, that would be a skater squat or a pistol squat. Pistol squat's a little bit different biomechanically. Skater squat's pretty similar. I can smash skater squats all day. Now, it forces me to have a little bit more mobility in my front ankle, and I've got to be a little bit more active with my back hamstring, but that single leg squat transfers quite well. And I also believe it does transfer quite well to the pistol, as long as you still have that mobility through your hip. Same thing if we're looking at a good example would be pull-ups versus lat pull-downs. I believe there's a little bit more of a gray area with those two comparisons, but asking the question, we should pull this for Instagram, asking the question, does a specific form of resistance-based lifting transfer over? So will lat pull-downs make me better at pull-ups? Will a single leg squat improve my skater squat? Okay, those are specific questions. If we look at that lat pull down and we increase my lat pull down strength with minimal rocking back and forth, and at the same time, we're also practicing that pull up, and we're also doing things like shoulder external rotations. We're also working on bicep strength. That's going to lead to, while we're doing that, an improvement, okay, in my pulling capacity while I'm still doing that lat pull down. And if I can continuously increase that, I'm likely going to be able to execute a pull-up later on down the line than if I didn't do that lat pull-down. Same thing with that single leg squat. If I want to get better at a skater squat, if I can increase the load on my single leg squat, I'm very likely going to increase my ability and capability to execute a skater squat. So 100% weight-bearing exercises, weight-based resistance training can lead to an improvement in calisthenics. Nightmares. Flow makes it so good. Have you ever heard Lord Knows by, oh geez. Yeah, I mean those are all songs that are played very regularly at the shot circle here. So for sure. Yeah, I believe that 100%. Gabe Young's just coming in. Do you think, Gabe, good to see you. Yeah, it is a lifestyle. I agree with that, David. Do you think there's any be if it to trading laterally for a closed skilled sport like pole vault? Okay, so Gabe's saying, do you think there's any benefit to training lateral work for a closed skilled sport like pole vault? Yes, I do believe that there is, but your percentage of training would be a bit lower with lateral based training versus one directional. Okay. I think it can help, especially with like the glute med and just making sure you have trunk stability, making sure that your hip girdle is stable and solid. I also think it can help with your mobility. Think about Cossack squats. That can help with your groin strength, and that can be affected on takeoff for a pole vaulter. So for sure, I believe that could happen. Carpet gym weightlifting. Hey, coach, I find a dynamic start position really difficult and slower than my static start to both the Olympic lifts. What does that say about my strengths or weaknesses? I would say, first of all, don't worry about it. Okay. Kendrick Ferris didn't have a dynamic start. Kendrick Ferris would get set and he would go like this, get set, poof, and just explode right up. Watch videos of him. Okay. He would be just like crank and go. And he's probably, outside of Tommy Kono, I would probably say Kendrick Ferris is the best weightlifter from the U.S. in the history of the sport. There's a couple other guys that could argue over, who that would be. I would probably say Kono would be number one. Kendrick Ferris would be probably number two because he's in the modern era and was a total freak of nature. Didn't use dynamic start. Now, do I believe if I took let's say a normal person, okay, an absolutely normal person, the normal person will get more out of a dynamic start than a static start. What the static start does is it keeps it a little bit simpler. Okay, dynamic start is a little more complex. The static start will make it so if you're very good at squatting, I would recommend it's okay to go strictly with a static start. If you're not as good of a squatter, play around with the dynamic start. Make sure that when you're dropping the butt or you're starting here and then you come up, that there's some type of rhythm. You've got to train the rhythm. And that's where hangs and pauses can come into play as well. I think that all of those things factor into it. But typically, if you're not a good dynamic starter, that's going to be related to leg strength. You probably have really good leg strength. 101 IQ, like 50 clap push-ups at 150 pounds, a world away from 50 clap push-ups at 220. Yeah, I do agree with that. So what percentage of people have the potential to be elite? How do you know if you're one of the special ones? I'm trying to read 101 IQ. I believe 101, you're talking about clap push-ups and that basically, okay, so he's essentially saying that doing the 50 clap push-ups that I discussed, What I would do in this case is, so when you do a clap push-up, you're going to have about 80% of your load, maybe a little bit less of your load if you're level. If I had an athlete that was 180 pounds or less, I would have them do 50 clap push-ups with their feet elevated. That's where you're going to see a better payoff. Once they get 50 clap push-ups flat, elevate their feet. Now, I wanted to point this out. We've had tons of DMs that we've been executing 50 clap push-ups every night for the last 5 weeks. 5 weeks, and just hammering it. We have a kid on site actually who's a freshman in high school who just benched 315 from doing the 50 clap push-ups every single night. So one of those examples would be that if you're lighter, elevate your feet more. If you're heavier, you can keep your feet flat. But all the naysayers, I actually sort of want to do a challenge myself where it's like every single day I would do 50 clap push-ups and test my bench. I don't know if that would be worthwhile doing, but I believe that a lot of this comes back to the naysayers just don't want to do the work. It's like, dude, just try it for 8 weeks. Just try it. Tell me you don't get better at all. Just try it. Please. Go do dumbbell bench, go do flat bench, go do dumbbell incline, go do those exercises for a week, do your tests, do 50 clap push-ups for 8 straight weeks, and then come back and tell me you didn't get stronger at all. And yes, there's going to be something from progressive overload, but I believe that even with progressive overload, the clap push-ups will win in that study. Again, that's based off of anecdotal evidence here with the number of 315 to 405 high school benches that we have and the 225-pound female benches that we have in high school. But that's what I think. Try it. Try it. You should do a 50 clap push-up challenge and test to see if it increases your bench. Yes. I should call somebody from Instagram just commented on that. Sages of Iron. I should call everybody out and I'll bench, let's say a test, do a dumbbell bench test. This would be great for Instagram. Okay, so we're going to go into, what's this next? Anonymous had a good question. And Levi Wiseman has a question too. So Anonymous, thanks. And I'm also a 16-year-old. I made a fitness book for people who are looking. Okay. Let's see. If we get Levi, I'm trying to get strong on my main list for wrestling, and I know that you should be able to lift 1.5 times your body weight and squat 2x for squat. I weigh 280. What can I do to build up to that? So when you're heavier, that relative percentage is going to be a little bit lower. Okay, so if you're a little bit heavier, right, at 280 pounds, that number will be a little bit lower. So what I would say for you would be, maybe one, I would try if possible. Well, just focus on increasing that back squat 5 rep max, doing the clap push-ups. That's going to help you quite a bit, and making sure that you're proficient with a power clean, especially as a heavyweight wrestler. If you can increase your bench with 50 clap push-ups, can you increase your squat with squat jumps? So Anonymous, we talked about this last week, and my example was doing pull-ups daily or doing front squats and back squats daily. I think is very similar. And I think that, we just got Finn Steffen coming in. He's currently the number 1 linebacker in Germany. Thank you for all your free knowledge that you give away. No problem, bro. Thank you. Steve just commented, when I was in basic training, I could do 3 sets of 50 clap push-ups. It definitely works. Yo, Dane, would there be something similar? Okay, so we have a couple people asking about the clap push-up version of back squats. And I think that it's a little bit more complex with back squats. I do think pistol squats will help. I think the complexity is that the load on your back is going to be drastically higher. So I do think that would be harder to come into play. I think something like tuck jumps with goblet squats or tuck jumps with like daily front squats and different intensity levels will help. So that would be my answer to that. I don't know if that helps. Keist is in the chat. Okay, James actually just asked, do you literally train every day with clap push-ups, or every training day do you do clap push-ups? If my bench is under 315, I think you should do it every single day. If your bench is, if my bench let's say is 405, I'd probably just do it on those training days. I think that's the other interesting part is, like, we've got Sam Mattis on site here who's doubled 500, and he'll still hit like 4 sets of 12 clap push-ups. Keist, How long does it take for the average athlete to hit their near max athletic potential while doing their sport? I think that that's a big question that should be based around what is their daily schedule? Okay. What's the schedule of that individual look like? Okay. What, are they able or capable of getting in the weight room regularly, even with a lot of work, one, on their athletic career, but also two, outside of that realm, like actually working a normal job. So Keith, I would say for an average athlete to hit their near max potential, I still think, like, let's say if we had an average athlete, right? Like total standard athlete, like we want to get some kid is in high school and he can power clean 205. Okay. That's good. It's not mind blowing, solid, 185 pounds. But we need to get him, his max potential would be 330. I think that would probably take like 6 to 8 years to get to that point and increasing your back squat. Now, if he's a better athlete, if he's very well coordinated, that might only take 6 months. Like that's how crazy it is depending upon who your parents are, right? And also depending upon how well you hold yourself accountable showing up to training, how well you hold yourself accountable to be intentional and focused when you're in training. All that stuff matters. What do you consider a truly elite bench at 242? I need to know the age. Also, it's crazy you have high schoolers benching 400. Dude, we have a high schooler who benched 400. I mean, Nicholas benched 405. Nicholas benched 405. He's like 195. We've had a couple kids bench 405 that were 215, 220. Dude, we had a kid, J.R. Strauss, he's a linebacker right now at Villanova, who was 220 and he inclined bench 315 for like a set of 10. Like, look him up. He's a real individual. We're not making this stuff up. We've got videos of him. Just phenomenally strong. Will it ever be an option to program everyday squatting in peak strength? What a freaking great question. And I'm writing that down every day. That's a question that Trevor, who does all the programming for us with peak strength, he's right behind me on the other side of this wall, is probably listening to this, rolling his eyes like, gosh, Dane's going to come to me with all these ideas after this freaking live. When do you decide to wear your Walmart jacket? What does that mean, inspirational nomad? Is that a knock on me? Are you making fun of me? Are you going to make me have sad boy face? Say someone has a punch technique, left foot in front, sprint motion. The right hand is punch extended. Okay, so left foot's in front in a sprint motion. The right hand is extended. The same time the rear foot is starting to leave the ground. Would practicing the push burst of the sprint improve technique? So it's boom. Yes, I believe it would. I don't know if I would say it would improve technique. What's a Walmart jacket? What is my Walmart jacket? I actually have a USPS vest that I got from, ironically, Nick Singleton's dad. Yeah, Trevor is an absolute fantastic guy, Keith. He's the most wholesome person and probably the most liked employee at Garage Strength. I don't know if that's accurate, but probably. Okay, so going back to Sean's question, he's saying if someone's punching, okay, their left foot's forward, someone punches, as they're fully extended, their back foot just leaves the ground as they're fully extended, connecting, right? Would doing an explosive push forward help with that? What I would do, I would try and train the parts. I would train like some type of explosive, like push up or a banded explosive hold, like an isometric hold. One thing with rate coding here, to get into the physiology, is that rate coding, and we should pull this for Instagram. One thing with rate coding is that isometric, like overcoming isometrics, does a really good job with rate coding, which if we can think about rate coding in the simplest way, it's like playing Tekken Tag back in the day and you're smashing the buttons really quick, going back and forth, leading to more power output. That's essentially what an overcoming isometric can do. So if we're punching someone and we have this locked out and we're holding a band with tension and we're really focused on that, or we're pushing into a barbell or something, right? What ends up happening then is as we push, right, we're recruiting and recruiting and we're recruiting. and then that leads to greater power output. So what I would do is I would superset like an overcoming isometric or do an explosive push-up or something like that, and then pair that with some type of sprint start or depth drop to a jump off of one leg. And so you would be pairing the technical aspect and the rate coding around the technical aspect of punching along with some type of explosive sprint. That's how I would think through that lens of execution. And we can use that entire clip on Instagram Reels. Oh, they were talking about my Romanian vest. Why'd they call it the Walmart jacket? Come on. I love that Romanian vest, but it's too hot right now. I'll wear it a couple weeks. It's going to start cooling off. If powerlifters have so much type 2 muscle fibers, then why aren't they explosive like athletes? Do they actually have a lot of type 2X? Is it because type 2A and type 2X? Okay. If yes, then yeah, you can train both at the same time for sure. And I would also say like you can see there's some really good transitions of powerlifters over to weightlifting, and they develop that. Look at Shane Hammond. He was a phenomenal powerlifter that became a world class, one of the best supers. I think he got 5th at the 2000 Olympics. There's a couple other transfers from powerlifting to weightlifting. I think it's definitely possible. Also, the powerlifters just are moving a little bit slower because they don't necessarily need that in their training. Thinking through the lens of the sport is like you stand in place and you exhibit a large amount of force, and it doesn't have to be overly fast. It has to be fast, but not as fast as some other sports. So like it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be training super, super explosively. Like you'll see in other sports. Do genetically gifted athletes reach their genetic potential faster than average people, or does it happen at the same pace? So I would think over time it would take the same period to get there because they might be at a higher genetic potential. But I do think that there is a potential that it would happen slower only when gifted athletes, okay, here's another clip. Gifted athletes that have a very high progress at a young age struggle with the mental outlook of, I need to do this to continue to get here. So they're so good, right, that things come extraordinarily easy. And then you might have an athlete who's a good athlete, right, or an elite athlete, but not the greatest athlete. They don't have phenomenal genetic potential, and they recognize at an earlier age, I've got to work a little bit harder to get this done. And I would actually use Nicholas Singleton as an example. Nick is a good athlete, but he's not the greatest athlete of all time. But he realized at an early age, if I train consistently, if I do all this technical work, if I do this speed work, if I do this lifting, I'm going to become a better football player. And so he grinded, and now he's had this ingrained work ethic, and that's why he's so good now. Other athletes that tend to have this big, huge peak early, not always, but sometimes, not always, sometimes will struggle with the transition periods. They'll struggle with more tests and challenges in their training and in their life because they haven't had to struggle as much up to that point in their career. So they just haven't had that experience of struggle as frequently. And when you have more frequent experiences of struggle, you tend to handle that stress a little bit easier as you age. So that's one thing to just keep in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that genetically talented, the best in the world, never struggled. It means they likely have figured out, Michael Jordan's a good example. He got cut from his JV team or something in 9th or 10th grade, and then eventually became the greatest of all time. And it's like, it's just keeping those things in mind. And I don't think that's necessarily things that we really should even be worried about. I think it's just worry about what can you do every single morning to cultivate your power. When you're waking up, what are you going to do for that day to make yourself a better athlete or a better coach or a better person or have a better relationship to get to and enjoy yourself? And what are those intentional tasks that you're going to do, that you're going to execute every single day so you can keep chipping away at whatever it is that makes you happy or whatever it is that's going to make you a better athlete. Sean, that's funny. Inspirational nomad. I'm glad that I got that clarified. Do genetically gifted athletes? Okay, that's a question we just did. I find myself so much faster on the bar when I do no feet. Why is that, and how do I help it? You're faster under the bar because you have better connection to the ground and to the bar, and so you feel that better on the turnover. I think what you can do is hangs will help alleviate that. So hangs with moving your feet will help that. Do you think combat athletes benefit from rest days? Anyone's going to benefit from rest days for sure. It just depends on how much training they're doing. Mind-muscle connection is excellent way to build muscle. Is it the same case with lifting heavy? Because when you lift heavy, all you think of is lifting the weight and nothing else. Anonymous, that's not necessarily accurate. When you're lifting heavier weight, and if you have the intention of like, I need to move this weight fast, or I need to move this weight in this specific means of execution, that is a form of mind-muscle connection. Mind-muscle connection is not just, thinking about curling and thinking about my bicep pump while I'm curling. Mind-muscle connection or mind-muscle action is also going to be related to lifting heavy weights. When you're doing Olympic weightlifting movements, or if you're doing plyometrics, or if you're doing ballistic movements, throwing medicine balls, if you are actually thinking through that intentional purpose, that technical execution that you need to do, that leads to greater mind-muscle connection. That's why I think reflexive exercises are so phenomenal. And we've been hounding them for a while now. This is going on like 2 years. Reflexive training series transfer well, one, because they're at high speeds, but two, because of that mind-muscle connection. Okay, so it doesn't appear like a standard mind-muscle connection, but it's still existing. It's still in there. Would it be beneficial for youth athletes to focus more on developing their athletic skills than their technical skills? I don't know if I would differentiate between and he's referencing the age of 16 to 20. I don't know if I would differentiate between athletic skills and technical skills. So to me, an athletic skill could be, throwing a football more precisely. That's a technical skill and an athletic skill. To me, hitting a baseball, it's an athletic and technical skill. I think that we have to make sure that we're resistance-based training athletically to develop technical skills. I'll use the baseball analogy, okay? If you watch Vlad Guerrero or Mike Trout, and one thing based around baseball swinging is that if you look at shoulder abduction here of Vlad Guerrero Jr., right? He gets here, or Ohtani, right? There's a shoulder abduction here as they're having their counter movement, okay? And then there's elbow supination and radial flexion, okay? And then after that happens, the hips come through. There's trunk rotation. There's a little bit of typical like a flexion towards one side. If they're left-handed, it's the other side, obviously. That's going to help carry that through, but it's shoulder abduction that comes up as like a counter movement here almost, and then comes through, or actually I think it would be here, then it comes through with elbow supination and radial flexion. Then we come through from the knob, right? From the knob to finish and have a greater speed on the head of the baseball bat, up to 4 meters per second faster. Now, that's an athletic skill and it's a technical skill. And if we can train the actual resistance-based exercises to improve that, let's say training shoulder work, explosively, let's say training and through reflexive movements, let's say training rotational ab strength, let's say training forearm strength. Now we can control the knob a little bit better. We can have stronger counter movements. We can silence any noise that's coming into our trunk, and that leads to better rotation, which in turn is going to lead to even faster bat head speed. So I think that we've got to look at training through the athletic realm and the technical realm concurrently. Yo, coach, do you remember me? Chris. Got a lot of Chris's in my life. I always train squats, feet on railroad tracks. Sean, that reminds me. So growing up, we have a railroad tracks through my backyard at my parents' house. And we would do railroad tracks it's like the tracks, if we can think about it, the tracks go this way, right? And then they have these wooden things that go across. Okay, we would actually go, myself and this kid named Dewey, we would do footwork on the railroad tracks, and then we would try and sprint distances on the rails, but we would do on the crossbars here, the cross wood pieces, why can't I think of the name of them? And then we would go backwards, we go sideways. So you made me think about that. A really unique way, it's like a speed ladder, but on railroad tracks. How can I get my body used to feet? it won't hurt your knees if you don't squat. If you're more comfortable, so here's one thing. There's a lot of blanket statements that we see based around how we should squat, okay? And if you watch me walk, my toes go out like this. When I stand like this, it hurts my hips. And when I squat this way with my toes straight forward, it hurts. I'm in severe pain. So if I go out like this, I feel great. My oldest son, Lincoln, tends to walk straight-toed. My youngest son, Keenan, tends to walk straight-toed. If they just put their toes out a hair, they feel fine. Okay, well, at least the oldest one. The youngest one's only 4, so we don't know yet. Now, my daughter and my other son, Sanderson, have toes like me. And I think where I'm going with this is that it really comes down to your body and how your body's built. I don't think everybody can fit into squatting straight-toed forward. And I think some people benefit from having less toes out. I think toes out tends to be the most comfortable for the blanket amount of people. And I still think there's going to be some people that can benefit from squatting with their toes forward. I would tell you, try it a little bit with your toes out, just a hair. You might feel a little bit more groin activation, and in turn, over a long period of time, you might notice it's different. So just try it with a hair out, with the toes hair out. James, since lots of college athletes seem to be slower at the combine than in high school, do you think there's a decent amount of kids running 4.3 or 4.2? Maybe. I don't know. Do you have a yearly schedule for your weightlifters for different cycles? Yeah, we do. Generally we do. Carpet gym, we do, but it's very dynamic and it's able to alternate. 101 IQ. What is a truly elite bench for 242-pound adults? A truly elite bench there? I mean, dude, I think if you bench over 550, you're elite no matter what. I think if you're benching over 500, you're elite. But probably 550 is elite. 600 pounds clean, no anabolics, is a very, very good bench. 550, no anabolics. Very, very good bench press. All right, everybody, I'm going down to training. Remember, I still coach a lot of athletes. I'm so happy I still do that. I got to go down and coach for the next 2 hours. Thank you guys for tuning in. Does powerlifting build functional strength? I think it can, to a point, for sure. Thank you guys for tuning in and the great questions. Don't forget, make sure that you comment on each week's YouTube long-form videos so that you can try to win the free T-shirts. And also, don't forget, we see your comments, so keep them rolling in. Great questions. Until next time, peace.